Come down this road with me.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Speak Project. This is Speak Up with Tank, and I'm your host, Tank. And tonight we have a pretty amazing guest who's going to share some incredible new concepts and construction using new materials that actually do all types of amazing things for our health and help maintain optimal health. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But first off, Gunnar, are you here? Gunnar is not here. That's okay. So I want to just recap a little bit about last night because Dr. Hubert Rampersad came online and we had a nice conversation with him. And he is a very successful published author, and he has over 35 books that were published. And he was sharing with us some ideas about innovative education, innovations in education, we should say. Now, I think it's fair from now on, we're always going to review the previous night so we can kind of talk about what was said because, there's some things that we have a little more solid facts on, and there's some ideas that we have that are a little bit different. So I always want to make sure that we respect our guests, but we also want to make sure that we add to that and, we learn from our guests, and our guests hopefully can learn from us. So Dr. Rampersad was talking about ways to innovate, and he was kind of keeping the focus of education on money. And it really is all about how to make money. And our belief fervently here at Speak Project is that all businesses and education really have to create new metrics to measure our success. If we don't create new metrics, then inevitably what will happen is we will continue to make the same mistakes that we have made all the time. So to do that, we have to start with the education. And what I propose to Dr. Rampersad, which I know he does like this idea, which is what we're going to use the Green Lantern University for. Now, the Green Lantern University will have an actual location. We'll have a campus, probably several campuses, in fact. But the Green Lantern University will also have an online platform. That way we can go internationally. And that platform will be used for all types of things, not just school. It'll be used as a corporate training platform. It'll be used as a proper educational platform as well, so that people can get their hands on the real history, understand the real science, the real physics out there in the world, and actually get an alternative idea about what the world is. And in that, we are going to have classes on human empowerment projects. So I'm very big on the use of words. Humanitarian projects, right? Humanitarian is a term that goes back to the law of war. And the law of war basically says this is what is acceptable treatment for human beings during war times. And the reason why that exists is because we have been under global martial law until about 2014 when there was a peace treaty signed, and that was done away with. And most people don't even know about that. But that's a different conversation. But that being said, because we're no longer under global war, humanitarian projects really don't apply the same way. Now, I know it's just words because most people associate being humanitarian with being good to people and, things that are helping people. But the reality is that only about 1.5% of all of the United Nations funds that have gone out to humanitarian efforts have ever made it to the project owners. That means trillions and trillions of dollars have gone into the pockets of the elite dragon families who have used that to enslave us. They've used that to create war. They've actually done the exact opposite from what they present to us as who they consider to be basically slaves. The reason why they call us consumers, they look at us as useless eaters, right? They just use us to drive their economy and to mine their mines and create their products and to traffic humans. So part of their they are humanitarians, kind of like cowboys herd cows. Well, humanitarians traffic people. And, not everybody out there who's a humanitarian does that. I'm just saying in their world. That's how they see it. And the way they see it is they don't show us or appreciate or look at us with the same level of respect as we look at each other because they have operated under a hierarchy that was above us. And we are currently doing away with that hierarchy, and the people are growing up from the bottom or from the roots up. And at the very top is the sole sovereign monarch on the planet, which is Kimberly Ann Gogan, who basically was given that role in 2012 when she turned 40 years old. She came of age. So now we are in the process of liberating humanity, and that's what this show is about, is how do we liberate humanity, and how do we do that without terrifying people, because people have to be aware of the problems, and we have to be diligent in pointing out those actual problems. But we can't get consumed with the negativity, because the reality of the world that we live in is most of us live in a very buttercup world where things are not so bad and the sky's the limit and all these things seem wonderful. But the reality is that the sky is not the limit. The sky is just where we begin to fly, and therefore the limits that we have on ourselves and have been imposed on us, and ultimately no one can really impose anything on us, so we end up imposing these limits on ourselves. So our collective consciousness is consumed with a reality and creating a reality that has really been fed to us. So we are trying to stimulate that consciousness in others to create a new reality, to create a new world. Gunnar, did you come online?
Yes, I'm here now. How you doing?
So I'm doing okay, man. I was giving a little recap, So what did you think about last night's guest, Dr. Ramstead? Or what did you think about the concept, not the person? But...
Yes, right. To tell you the truth, there were quite a few things that I objected to. He talked about creating more online universities. I understand the fascination with online universities, because it's like, would you rather go sit in a class and listen to a boring professor, or connect online and listen to a boring professor? I mean, it's all the same, of course, but in my opinion, online universities are really not the answer, because most students, these days most students understand how the system works, and they understand that really they're only going to school to get a letter grade and to learn how to take tests. But if our education system
also they're training them to be in a position 9 to 5, right? To sit in the same place all day long, and and the reason why, it's like back in the day they used to train kids to go work in the Ford factories. Now they're training kids to sit at a computer and fill out a database, right?
Correct. Yes, exactly. And I see education or institutions of learning as a place where in an ideal world, I think that you would be able to expand and express your creativity.
How dare you, Gunnar? You think that education should be about expanding our creativity?
Oh, definitely.
My goodness, that is a radical concept. Yeah,
yes, it is. Well, when I was younger, even when I was going to college, I quickly figured out that, of course, college was a lot more difficult than high school was. And everybody at the time was telling me, that oh, you'll like college so much better. There's just so much more freedom, and I'm like, what kind of freedom is there? I mean, freedom to go to the bathroom when I want? What kind of freedom is that, for hell's sakes?
That is definitely a plus. But yeah.
Yes, exactly. But it did feel very restrictive, and I had to play by the rules in order to get through college, and there was no room for creativity. There was no room for expressing my own ideas and to even learn my own talents and learn my own creative abilities. And at the time I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if I had professors and instructors that really, that knew how to draw me out and knew how to really get me to express my creativity and encourage that, and I mean, I never had any professors that did that, and so I mean, let's
talk about that. Let's talk about that first, Gunnar. So there's there's a bunch of things you said. I think I just want to hit on, right? So first of all, in the role of professor, teacher, right? The term doctor actually means teacher. I don't know if you know that. So even doctors, medical doctors, right? They're teachers, and
right.
And I think that teaching is the most natural thing that any human being can do. But what they do is they train us to go pursue money. But as a family unit, if you think about it, if you're, someone was at home, right, raising the kids, they would be teaching them, certain values. They would demonstrate, and they would, demonstrate how to love in a way that's conducive with that family's values, right? In addition to, encouraging true creativity, right? And true creativity goes way beyond arts and crafts and music, which those are definitely part of it. But everything around us is the creative process, right? So we're always creating new realities based on, the agreement we have between what we think about, what we talk about, and what we are about, or what we act on, right? And the more you get into this kind of teaching, you find, and this is what I was trying to get across to Dr. Ramstad last night, is, you had a time in India where all of India was so prosperous, right? They were all into, the yoga practices, right? They believed in these things, and they believed in these spiritual aspect of life, and that's all they focused on. And they were tapping into the etheric, energetic, field that's all around us. And they actually still teach that practice in parts of India today. And there's actually videos online if anybody wants to ever check them out. And you can see these kids who have just been trained to tap into the cloud, and you can ask them a question about anything. And you know what they do? They don't memorize anything. All they do is they've practiced and they've mastered the art of tapping into the cloud, and they can answer virtually any question. It's amazing.
Wow.
Now imagine what the heights are of humanity if we didn't have to, like a computer, like fill up our storage, right? Because that's what we're trained to do. We're trained to memorize things and repeat them. And what this does is it creates kind of like grooved pathways in the brain, which are harder and harder to overcome and to change our thinking because we have these grooved pathways, which essentially become our absolute truths, right? And and this is part of what I was talking, the idea and the concept of the field. What that means is that most of the information that makes up who we are is, I don't want to say outside of ourselves, but it's stored in a greater version or a greater expression of the wholeness of our being, right? Which I believe our torus energy field that we create, because every individual creates their own field, it extends out into this greater realm to touch other people. So that's one thing. Now, Gunnar, I want to throw this at you because I agree about the online universities, but here is how we're going to make the Green Lantern University something unique. Because I've already done this. I already built an entire university for corporate wellness where I created 44 classes. I had doctors create 44 classes to teach people how to improve their health, right? And to do it in very quick segments online. And what it did is it gave them actionable items to go out and take action on, right? To actually participate and engage with other people. Now, that's what we're going to do at the high school, starting at the high school level, where we're going to actually teach kids about Tesla, right? And like real science. We're going to teach kids about, we're going to give them, I'm not sure how to do this exactly yet, but with the history, but we've got to get some accurate history out there. So people know, like the history you've been taught is not real. In fact,
I agree.
In case anybody doesn't know, the real history books that tell the accurate history for the basic textbooks for like, K through 12 in the United States have been published. And they've been held by the publisher because the history is so radically different, they were afraid to let it out. People were leaving the room crying when they saw the reality of what was there.
Wow.
So instead, what they've done is they've given little tidbits to kids now, right, to start to pretend like they're giving them the real history, right? Like they expose to, Christopher Columbus didn't really discover the United States, right? And therefore, that's why they're not really celebrating Christopher Columbus, right?
Right. Right.
So this concept is that we'll have classes where high school students will be able to take college level courses, right? And then in about 2 years, we'll finish our accreditation, which we've already. Dr. Remsen has already applied for that for us, so we know that we're in. We just have to start actually running our classes. So in about 2 years, and what we'll do is we'll make this available to students at the high school level because we've got to get them before they're so ingrained in this kind of broken way of thinking. And then we'll have actionable classes where we actually teach what it means, what human empowerment means to students. We'll let them go do a whole class on needs assessment. I can't emphasize enough, the most important aspect of every humanitarian project is human empowerment project is to go out and do a needs assessment. If you don't know what the community needs, you have no right to show up and tell them what they need, right? That's
yes,
kind of like
I agree.
The rich white guy theory, right? Like the rich white guys show up and they put a whole bunch of stuff. They're like, look at all we did for you, right? Which any husband can relate to at some point because we've done the same thing for our wife, right? And it wasn't what they wanted. Same principle applies, right? So we don't want to go into cultures.
Right.
We don't want to go into cultures on a missionary trip, right? Where we go in and basically tell them, look, your religion is pagan because it's not Christian. Now I want you to convert to mine, right? Because in case anyone doesn't know, the whole idea of missionaries comes from the Catholics when they literally decided that the Mongols, right, with Kublai Khan, that Kublai Khan allowed all religions to coexist in his land. So the Catholics went in to dominate them, and they said the problem is the religion, and we're going to make everybody be the same religion. Then we'll be able to control and put everything in order. That's the belief. So that's what missionary trips are really about. That is also how Hawaii was, kind of taken over, and now you have the big conflict with who is the rightful tribe to the heir to the throne to be the king to restore the sovereignty of Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
So all these things, we want to teach those classes, and then they'll go in their own neighborhoods, right? These kids, it'll be like juniors and seniors, and they'll go out in their neighborhoods and they'll identify a concern, and then they're going to create a project around it. And then their last class, we'll have a senior advisor there, who will be a program manager or a project manager rather, and he will work with them or she will work with them to bring their project to life, and we will fund it. So those kids, by the time they get to college, we are going to give them one of the greatest thing they can put on their resume, how they actually participated in the Green Lantern program, and we're going to actually teach them what it means to be a Green Lantern business, right? To pay people what they're worth and to really value them, right? And then every kid that completes that program, we're going to pay for their college.
Wow.
But they got to come back.
So basically, so what you're saying basically is that you're giving them, hands-on experience instead of just, telling them, what they should know or what they should learn. They're actually going out in the field and learning it by getting their hands dirty and doing the actual work, which
the novelty, right?
In theory, I mean, of course, that's what an intern does, but they can't practice what they know until they've sat through several, lectures and classrooms and basically been brainwashed, and then they can go out and just, use their brainwash techniques, which, is just really all regurgitated information, basically. Yeah.
That's
and they're not contributing anything new.
Right. They go out and use the same basic broken methods. Well, in this methodology, what we'll do is we'll use the online platform as a basis to give them some foundational things, right? And then we're going to let them define what it means. These young people are going to define, at the same time we're defining what human empowerment means, right? And what made them feel empowered, about and let them define it, to go out and what are ways you can take your community and make other people feel empowered, to make other people feel connected and actually have real life human interaction. And that's the thing, you said to me earlier that I thought was so powerful is that's part of what the online experience could really miss out on, right? Because they've used these devices to program us at so many levels, and you see it all the time. with kids that are just walking around, just completely zoned out, like zombies. Letting I joke at my son. I call his phone the think box, right? Just letting it think for him all the time. It drives me crazy,
Right.
So that's different. So what else, man? What else did you see, Gunnar?
Right. Yes, and unfortunately, if you do think for yourself, you're not going to last very long. I mean, you have to, like you said, you have to think within the box, not outside the box. And
no. What, you're saying the old system, right? That's what you mean, in the old system.
Yes. Oh, yes, definitely. Yes, correct. And
which, by the way, the other problem with that is the things we were talking about, Dr. Emerson, is he was talking about innovation, but really didn't go into too much depth about what that means, right? He talked about other structures to basically fit into a broken system. We are not trying to conform to a broken system. We are creating a brand new one. We are changing it.
Right.
That's what we're doing. That's the difference, and that's what real innovation looks like, is when you're actually changing the way things get done. Right.
I agree.
Anything else stand out to you, Gunnar?
One other thing really fast. So, Dr. Ramperstad, is that how to say his name?
Ramperstad,
Yeah. He also talked about how that, we're falling behind the Chinese and, following the Chinese and India and a lot of Asian countries, which, I mean, hello? Oh, I don't know what happened there. And, and that's true. I mean, as far as like, math and sciences goes, that's true. But does that mean that the Chinese have a better system? Does that mean that they teach better? Does that mean that students are actually learning more? Not really. It's just, they're just regurgitating information better, really, is all it means. I tell you that most Asian countries, their education system is based on a testing system, and tell you the truth, it's based on testing up through high school, and if you get better test scores by the time you graduate from high school, you get into a better college. And but once you get into college, then it becomes like high school, and it's just really easy. I mean, it's really easy in that you're not really under a lot of pressure to take tests or do really good on tests, for example, but still, it's not creating an environment of expansion and creativity, and I mean, honestly, I think that if you really had if we wanted to take off and have the best education system in the world, or even we would. I really think that we would. We would expand, and our education system would become the envy of the world if it was a place, like you said, where you could really expand your thinking and use your creativity and do things, get your hands dirty and actually work in the field or your area of interest and actually make a difference that way. Anyways, that's just my
there
opinion.
we go. Now, I think if we were going now, standardized testing has been a common practice. They use a fill-in-the-blank test for the SATs to judge whether or not you can get into a good school. And to be honest, that's all part of the CIA PsyOps program, so they can identify who is the easiest to mind control and who has the ability to be programmed by rote repetition. And that was introduced during the Reagan era, but I don't think that Reagan realized that. And this whole concept behind standardized testing is, I love what Einstein said. He said, everyone is intelligent, but if you judged a fish by how well it could crawl up a tree, it would spend its whole life thinking it was stupid, right?
Right.
So that's kind of what the current system is, right? Our brains are like spider webs, but we favor a certain aspect of our brain. This is what Howard Gardner talks about with the theory of multiple intelligences, right? There's musical intelligence and logical and social and visual and all these different types of intelligences, which really it just means that we favor a certain aspect of problem solving. But everything is problem solving, and that's what they've taken away. They've taken away our ability to think creatively, to look for solutions, and really our kids are kind of suffering from that. And I've had it on my mind to really develop an academy that was more dynamic for kids and interactive, just the way you said, for a long time. That's a totally separate project, and I got to be honest, sadly, I don't know if I'll get it done before my kids hit high school, because my sons are going into 8th grade this next year. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to do my very best. Now, Gunnar, I did something special just for you, my friend, and I think you'll like this. I decided that we need to dedicate a little bit of time to the swamp monsters of politics that we always hear about President Trump is getting rid of. So here, Gunnar, this is just for you.
Okay.
We celebrate some of our favorite swamp monsters, the very ones that everyone knows President Trump is doing his very best to get out of Washington, D.C., and stop rewarding mediocrity to run our country. Jerry Nadler has been leading the way in mediocrity by continuing to lead the charge against all conservatives and anything with conservative values, and he's been trying his best to get President Trump impeached. And after a House investigation, a Senate investigation, and an FBI special counsel investigation that has all cleared President Trump of any and all wrongdoing. Not even a misdemeanor was cited. And with that, President Trump gave them complete access. Even though he had the right to invoke executive privilege, he did not do that. So at this point, they continue to try to run President Trump down into the ground. And Jerry Nadler, he was quoted saying this today. He said, "As I said earlier today, the Judiciary Committee's investigation into obstruction of justice, public corruption, and abuse of power by President Trump and his administration will continue." Well, first of all, what does he think the Judiciary Committee's investigation is going to prove that the House investigation, the Senate, and the FBI didn't prove? He has issued these subpoenas today to two critical witnesses who have worked closely with the President. We are seeking the information in order to conduct proper oversight, consider potential legislation, and perform our constitutional duties. Well, hey, Nads, here's the truth of the matter. If we're going to be honest about you performing your constitutional duty, how about we acknowledge the way the Constitution recognizes life to be according to Cornell law? And it recognizes life to be any human being that is taken from the womb of a mother by natural means or even by the survival of abortion and has a heartbeat and is alive. That is recognized as an American. A baby, a human life in its most fragile state that is American. Now, if you are protecting constitutional rights, you should protect the constitutional rights of that baby to be allowed to live. The Born Alive bill has been brought up 38 times and shot down by your useless committees in Congress over and over again, making it very clear that your agenda is to kill people. And in addition, we know that many of you are addicted to the drug called adrenochrome, which you get from harvesting the adrenal glands and torturing the victims and drinking the blood. This is a well-known fact in the underculture of the government. You know it, and so do we. So the question comes down to, why are you continuing to pursue President Trump over and over and over again when clearly there are no charges? In my opinion, it's because you are guilty of crimes yourself. Outspoken, self-righteous critic of President Trump, Representative Elijah Cummings, appears to be caught up in a pay-to-play scandal. Cummings, 68, a Maryland Democrat, is chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. His wife is Maya Rocky Moore, 48, is chairman of the Maryland Democratic Party and briefly ran in the state's gubernatorial race last year. The couple married in 2008. Cummings was once heavily in debt, in part due to hefty child support payments to his first wife and two other women he had children with. But his financial situation has improved considerably since he became a congressman. And that doesn't really make sense. Rocky Moore runs two entities, his wife, a nonprofit group called Center for Global Policy Solutions, and a for-profit consulting firm called Global Policy Solutions, which in part is because they have almost identical names. Their operations appear to have overlapped, according to the IRS complaint filed by Watchdog Group, the National Legal and Policy Center, on Monday. The complaint states that the arrangement may have been used to derive illegal private benefit, and everyone is in absolute shock that any congressman could be involved in something corrupt while criticizing a president for being corrupt. Liars. Global Policy Solutions received more than $6.2 million in grants between 2013 and 2016. Several of the nonprofit groups' financial backers, which included Google, J.P. Morgan, and Prudential, had business interests before the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Cummings has served as Democratic chairman of the committee since January and previously served as ranking member. So, as would be expected, typically the heavyset, angry, baby-looking congressman, Elijah Cummings, he is criticizing President Trump all the time, demanding impeachment. Maybe perhaps it's because he is in fact part of the swamp. And because he's one of the swamp monsters, he wants President Trump impeached so that he can continue to make a lot of money for doing nothing. Today's swamp hero is Mittens Romney. And Mitt Romney has been notorious in making decisions showing that he is a rhino, meaning Republican in name only. But today he took a stand, and he actually made a statement on a radio show with Jake Tapper. He said, "I just don't think that there is the full element of intent that you need to prove an obstruction of justice case. I don't think a prosecutor would actually look at this and say, okay, we have here all the elements that would get this to a conviction," which is exactly what the Attorney General has been saying all along. There isn't evidence of actual obstruction of any kind. Furthermore, it's not even a crime to commit collusion. So what they have done is wasted millions of U.S. dollars, taxpayer money, so that they can discover that something that isn't a crime wasn't even committed. Therefore, they can't even prove that there was unethical behavior outside of the 40 pages of gossip written by Mueller. All right, Gunnar. I'm working on it, man.
Okay, that was great. That was great. I agree with everything.
Every week.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
And Mitt really is a rhino too. I mean, is there any question that he's even in Washington D.C. for any other reason than to be a pain in the side of the Republicans and Trump too. Honestly, he's not there for any other reason.
No, but clearly President Trump and Mittens there have come to some kind of agreement, and I would imagine Mitt, like some others, it's probably jumped ship because he sees the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Because he's right now he's outspoken, saying that there's nothing to impeach on. He's also talking about that potentially he and Trump agreed that potentially Alabama went too far with the absoluteness of what they did, because what they did in Alabama is they made all forms of abortion illegal, right? And the problem with that is this: is if you do that, it will most definitely get overturned, and if it gets overturned, you will shift the attention because the deep state will believe it'll be a big victory, and they'll play it up. It's just a victory for women's rights and all these things. But in reality, that's not the issue. It's not an issue if a woman has the right to choose. A woman has the right to choose, right? Now, I would argue, my personal belief on this, a woman has a right to choose who she sleeps with. A woman has the right to choose whether or not she sleeps with somebody or not. She has the right to choose if she uses protection. And I don't think it's unreasonable that if a woman's right to choose is taken from her, that she also has the right to choose in that first 12 weeks to have an abortion. And I do think that's reasonable and fair, and I will say it, but I am very, very much pro-life. I'm very much pro-life. I don't think that it is ethical in any way, and the fact that they are trying to kill these, the newborns, that they're allowing them to just die on the table. Literally, at 40 weeks, they can abort a baby. The fact that that's a law is terrifying because that will turn into a harvesting program. And that is why they're doing it. Whether people want to admit it or not, that's what's going on. I know that for a fact. So
right, it's the adrenochrome is the only thing that they care about. But of course, they can't come out and say that, so they have to find other reasons as to why they can harvest baby parts. Yeah, I agree.
And that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're injecting the fetal tissue that they're purchasing from Planned Parenthood into mice as experiments. So imagine, that's a horrifying reality that that's the world we live in. So that is kind of our report and update. I don't have a trust update at this time, other than I know that the trustee was successful in restructuring everything except for one piece was left. I'm fairly certain I know what that piece is, but she has not told me directly, so I'm not going to report on that at this time. But it does appear that we are right on, knocking on heaven's door, ready to break through. So with that in mind, we need amazing, creative, innovative ideas. And with us today is Larry Haines, and he is going to talk to us about some of his amazing ideas. Let's see if I got Larry. Are you on the phone?
I am on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for being here and sitting through my little report there. I appreciate that. So, Larry, tell us about what you're doing, man.
Well, I think I'm going to change the construction industry by using 3D printers to build affordable housing that's much stronger than what we do now, and also to build that housing in eco-villages, sustainable developments. Kind of much like you were talking about earlier when you were kind of recapping what you guys talked about yesterday and doing needs assessments and that sort of thing. Is a lot of people want to live differently, more healthy, and not dependent on so many government officials and that sort of thing. So I kind of tend to agree with that. Would like to see that happen.
You know what? Well, I have something very interesting with that that I want to talk to you about in a little bit. But because we are definitely building those communities, and we already have pieces in place, and we're speaking to tribes all over the United States to work with them as well, and bring a lot of that stuff to life. But Larry, explain to me how the 3D printers work. Because we've heard about these things for a long time. I've seen them. My daughter comes home with little 3D printed things from time to time. And how are they working to build a house, though? I mean, that's a pretty incredible concept.
There's a bunch of different kinds of 3D printing systems out there, if you will, from the small, the desktops, the metal printers that GE is using to rebuild jet turbines and so forth and so on. But basically, when you look at what 3D printing, truly is, it's the use of a mechanism to apply a product instead of taking a product away like a block. You're going to take a block and carve it down to something. You're cutting away a bunch of stuff. What we're doing is using an additive method where we add concrete just enough to build the house and have very little waste. But there's multiple ways to do that. Most people are familiar and have seen the videos where you take if you think of a tube of toothpaste and you just kind of ran it in the same exact line and essentially put layer upon layer upon layer. And those systems are what people typically think about 3D printing concrete, because that's kind of what's been out there. We use a little bit different approach so that we can get permits here in the United States anyway, and in the EU and that sort of thing where they have building codes. And what we do is we basically, if you think of your desktop printer, it's an inkjet printer, and it prints in two dimensions. It prints in an X and a Y axis, and it sprays ink onto the paper. So if you think of the mechanism itself, the plastic and the little wheels and all that stuff as one component, you think of the ink as another component, and then you think of the software and the paper in which it drives the image onto as the third component. What we're doing is we're inkjet printing concrete onto a three-dimensional base, and that base is we use something called a skip panel, which is basically insulation within a frame, metal frame, and then we're spraying concrete robotically on that frame. And the difference between our system that we have and pretty much all the other ones out there is they just print walls. They go up and they can't print out and over to print the roof, and we can. So we're actually building a house now that we're building the foundation kind of conventionally on a lot that's got about a 20-degree slope. So we're doing the footings and the columns and getting everything up level to where we're going to build the house. And then we'll use panels, these skip panels, for the floor, the walls, and the roof, and we'll create a monolithic structure inside and out with our 3D printer. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So basically, you're looking at a complete building, inside and out, minus windows, it sounds like, right? That is you
shoot around the windows.
So do you pre-wire this house so it has electricity ahead of time, and then you just kind of spray that in, or how does that work?
Well, if you stop and think about what a skip panel is, some people call them sandwich panels. So if you think everybody knows what an ice cream sandwich is, you've got the ice cream in the middle, the vanilla ice cream in the middle, and you've got the chocolate on the outside. What we're doing is we're basically putting a panel up where the ice cream is the insulation, and then we come and spray the chocolate or the concrete on both sides of that to create a panel. Well, what's sticking out a little bit from the ice cream is a metal frame, just a 16-gauge wire that's been welded together in kind of a truss type affair, so it's got some structural strength to it. And when you add all these components together, it makes what they call a structural panel. And in our case, it's a structural concrete insulated panel. And in doing that, you basically come and put the concrete on the outside first. We use a geopolymer concrete, and we can get into that later. But so we put that on first, and then the electrician and the plumbers are on the inside between the insulation and the wire frame, and they're running their conduits and wires and vents and all that sort of thing. And then once they're done and it gets inspected, then we come back and spray the inside of the house and cover that up just like you'd put sheetrock on it and cover it up. Except we don't use sheetrock.
So you're able to basically spray finish everything all in one fell swoop. Now the final product, I mean, now you got a house that's all concrete. Now, what are the benefits of that?
Well, we're building houses that'll last for centuries, not decades. And the reason we're doing that is because we want people to be able to pass wealth on for generation after generation. But another reason is that concrete that we're using, the last time we tested a tank, it was normal concrete is 3,000, 3,500 PSI, that they use for homes, foundations, driveways, so forth. Ours last testing was 14,350 PSI with a much higher flexural strength. True, yeah. So it's super strong. Well, here's another attribute to it. It's hydrophobic, which means it repels water. It doesn't allow water to get into it. So you don't have the seepage, you don't have the destruction with water getting into the pores or the capillaries, or cracks, small micro cracks in the concrete as it starts to dry and, crack. Everybody's seen that with concrete slabs before. And so our shrinkage factor is like 0.004, and we've already added in microfibers to even reduce that. So we're putting on a super strong concrete that repels water. It's on the roof, so if hail hits it, just like on a roadway, hail's going to bounce right off of it. It's going to have very minimal maintenance for decades. So as the homeowner stays in the house, they don't have to repaint their house. They don't have to put new roofs on every now and then. And so the life cycle cost, we think, is going to reduce between hazard insurance and lower maintenance. It's going to reduce the cost 20 to 25% just because your house is built differently. So that's.
So now these are modifiable in the sense that, because obviously people don't want to live in a concrete box, right? Like, you're not just going to leave it that way. So, but these are modifiable with all the home amenities of any other house, right?
We're doing a demo house that's going to knock the socks off people, and we're putting in German cabinets and $8,000 bathtubs from a company in Spain, and all kinds of countertops that produce oxygen and flooring, and just it'll be an awesome looking house.
Wait, let's talk about that. Countertops that produce oxygen. How? That's amazing.
It is amazing, and that's what I said. There's a company called Porcelanosa, which is a sponsor of our house. They're donating this equipment, the tubs, the tile, for the entire house, because they want to be a part of this change in the world. And so we're giving them publicity for that. That's part of, public relations. But they blew me away when we went and talked to them about this. They said, we've got this new product that produces oxygen. And they said 10 square feet of it produces enough oxygen for 6 adults for 1 year. And we just kind of went, what? And then they sent us the documentation and stuff on it. So we will be putting those. They're called Kreon countertops, Krion. We'll be putting those in our house. And I can only imagine how fresh the air is going to be in there. When light hits those countertops, there's some sort of a catalytic process, and I'm not a chemistry guy, so I can't tell you exactly how it works, but I believe the scientists and the people behind the product. It's a global firm, so, they're not just making this up.
And this is something that will be ongoing. It's not like you have to replace the countertops in a year or something.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and they're antibacterial. So there's just a lot of benefits to this type of product. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to change the construction industry and then add all these different products that are more healthy, more sustainable. Our concrete, for instance, you probably know this, but there's probably a lot of people listening that don't. The concrete industry is the second largest producer of CO2 in the world. Okay, that the industry does. Our concrete uses 90% less CO2 than normal Portland cement-based concrete.
So maybe we should slow down the depopulation. That's amazing. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So 85% of our product within that is recyclable or comes out of the ground naturally. One of the things we are trying to use is basalt rebar. Well, basalt is lava rock. And so, we can make rebar out of lava rock instead of, mining it and putting, coal and all these things and burning stuff and making steel. We basically can heat those lava rock. Are you saying
lava, like lava rock?
Like out of a volcano.
Lava?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood what you're saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's basalt is and it's common in literally every country in the world. And so
basalt actually used to be in wheat, actually, right? Because it was actually what made wheat grains healthy, and they've taken basalt out.
I'll take your word for that. Yeah, it really is.
I'm pretty sure that's the right term. But go ahead.
So anyway, the point that what we're trying to do is we're trying to change the industry because it's more affordable in the long run for the builder to build the house, for the buyer to buy the house, and then maintain and live in the house over time. You'd asked about what the cost is. It's not just the ongoing maintenance cost, but the energy efficiencies of these houses and the noise penetration from the outside are greatly, in the case of noise, reduced, in the case of energy efficiency, increased. So
that's a really big deal. I think that noise reduction. I think noise pollution, especially in urban environments, I think is a big. Well, it's obviously a big part of what disrupts people's natural healthy frequencies, right? And they disconnect from nature. So by protecting that, you're actually protecting the frequency. So now I know that your partner, or that you've been working with, Marcia,
right?
Who I know is Marcia O'Bannon, but she told me today that she changed her name. Marcia was supposed to be here today, but coincidentally, Marcia, because of a city's negligence with the cement and the way they took care of the sidewalk, she tripped and broke her wrist in 5 places, and she wasn't really feeling that great. So, I, of course, encouraged her just to hang back, and we would bring her back later. But she is a huge fan of shungite. Now, true shungite, and she's 69 years old, and she is sharp as a whip. She hasn't lost a step. Is that something you think you'll be able to, that you've been able to identify proper sources? Because I know there is, there's some fake shungite out there. So, is that something that you're going to still try to do and include that in your mixture with the cement?
We want to take a look at all those, especially the natural recurring things like that. So we want to. That's her bailiwick. So I'm kind of leaving that sourcing and stuff up to her. But in terms of the testing and some of the things we want to do, in one of our projects that we submitted was building an eco village, and it had an R&D lab in it, and that was basically R&D to test new materials and new mixes. And can you imagine not necessarily having to build with concrete even, or even the geopolymer concrete, but being able to add some sort of additive to clay. Well, half the houses in the world, especially in sub-Saharan and in Australia and things, are made of adobe or clay in some way, shape, or form. And if you could build those houses, those buildings with a local material that make it so much better,
yep.
That's what we want to do into the future. Because I think, look, the machines that are robotics, whether they're a 3D printer or a bricklaying robot or something, they're only going to go so far. The advances are going to come in the material sciences, in my opinion, to where
absolutely, I agree.
The insulations, the strength. I was working with a large German chemical company that produces the polyurethane foam to try and test graphene. The problem with right now, graphene is so expensive. It can strengthen things significantly, but it's cost prohibitive. So the idea is, I was talking to someone just last week, as a matter of fact, that said that the cost of synthesizing graphene is coming down significantly and will continue to fall. Much like microchip costs, as they were very expensive, and you can pack more onto a chip, and it's that, what is it, the law that they double in capability and half in price every year for forever, it seems.
Oh,
like.
yeah. Yeah, sure.
So it's the same thing with the materials.
We could actually take that a step. We could take that a step further, and we could create our own graphene on because the eco communities that you're describing, we are very much in the process of defining and creating other communities, which would be what I would compare to a larger kind of a gated community that would be much more inclusive of full services, right? Where
sure.
You have actual things there energetically that the things you're talking about with materials, because the natural materials of the planet, when used properly, they already have their own innate technologies that just operate in harmony with the planet and with us, right? So those technologies, in a sense, that's God's tech, right? And it's out there. And we just have not really tapped into it as much. But I love when I hear people doing more creative things. But we're going to build these facilities. Now, I have about 13 of the similar projects like this. And this is why in the Guardian of Camelot and in the Creators Network, which is the project planning network, it's really an ideal situation for a vendor who wants to operate ethically, right? Because
sure.
We're going to bring them in. We already have projects that are ready to go for them, right? And we're going to have those projects funded. So, and we're not going to nickel and dime you. We're not going to argue about money because we want your people to be paid well, right? We don't. If we nickel and dime people, they're going to cut corners. I'd rather they just get everything done and give people the best possible product, the best possible service, with the best possible attitude. And that is a much better way to do business.
I agree 100%. I think, I don't know if you ever had a chance to look at that eco-village that I designed.
Yep.
And I don't know if you, anyway, that 21-acre project, it had housing, it had food production, it had biomass where we were collecting through vacuum systems instead of gravity systems, the human waste, and using that as, just like they do in, halfway around the world, using it to create biogas, which would then be used to run a generator, and you could use the thermal energy for the gardening and in the greenhouses and so forth, and you could use the electricity to put into the microgrid and on and on and on. But one of the things you said earlier on the recap was, and on yesterday's show, was about education. I think online is fine, but I think hands-on learning is great. And I'm
copywriting that. I'm letting you know right now. Online is fine.
No, you're not. I already have.
We're about being hands-on.
hands-on online. Yeah, there you go.
I love it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love it, man. That's
copyright
great.
it.
No, you go ahead.
So we were working with Texas A&M, and they were going to be a part of this. So we had this ecoversity, we called it, where we were going to teach other people how to put together sustainable developments to scale them around the world, not just have us build one and then us build another one. And we want to teach other people. That's the whole point of what I want to do, is I want to sell these systems to teach people, contractors, how to build in their area, because I can't be everywhere at once. So what we're trying to do is scale through other people's expertise and resources in their local areas. Because as you said, unless you do a needs assessment, unless you know what people are looking for in housing and size and amenities and all that sort of thing, I can't come into an area and not know any subcontractors and try to tell people what they want. That's ridiculous. And so we want to give people the technology and the skills to go back and modify, our designs or even take their own designs and use them to build what we're, trying to do, which is a better house, faster and stronger than it's currently being built.
So, Larry, I'm listening to you, man, and this is incredible. I mean, this stuff is amazing, groundbreaking, innovative technology. I mean, this is housing that would, it sounds to me like it would be hurricane-proof too, like tornado-proof. I mean, because it would be so deeply rooted. Yeah.
I didn't go to the other attributes of it, but we're designing them to withstand 220-mile-an-hour winds. We already have the 200-mile-an-hour Dade County wind testing, the NFPA fire protection testing done on these panels, this panelized systems. So it's not like we're recreating the wheel. The reason we're doing this is so that we can build a house that stands up to 220-mile-an-hour winds, 8+ earthquakes, storm surge. If you remember in Hurricane Michael, and I remember you talking about this about 4 or 5 months ago, that there were like 1.2 million people still without housing or displaced because their housing was damaged or destroyed. Well, it was the same thing along the Gulf Coast the year earlier where we had 3 hurricanes and Houston flooded.
Yeah.
And, so we had literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that, guess what they did? They went back and rebuilt their houses the same way and waiting for the next event to happen again.
Hurricane, right.
The definition of insanity. And
well, so Larry, let's talk about that then. Let's talk, because I think that is a big key into why we're working together. I'm very much about helping companies and innovators and dreamers and imagineers and naturopaths and healers and people that are really the exceptional, outstanding. They've already tapped into that part of themselves that's amazing, and they're willing to go and be amazing. Which it's not just fluff when I say that. I genuinely mean that humanity has the ability to do absolutely anything, and I am dedicated my life to protecting and fostering humans to be the best version of themselves. Now, in your organization, I feel the exact same way. But I mean, my gosh, man, you got all this amazing stuff going on. It seems like people would just be flocking to you. So, but I know they're not the way they should be. So why not? What are the obstacles you had to deal with?
Well, it's not that they're not. I get calls, 3 and 4 times a day from contractors and developers and all that, and they always ask the same 2 questions: have you built one yet? And can you get permits? Or can I get permits in my area? And the answer is, well, we've already got permits because we build according to the IBC, the International Building Code. So we can get permits pretty much anywhere in the United States. There's some engineering involved in regards to soils and foundations that are local, but yes, we can. The second thing is we're building the house now as a demonstration project. The real issue has been funding. And the real issue is I could have had this stuff up and running, but it's so new and so, I don't want to say unbelievable, but it's just like everybody wants to see it done. They want to kick the tires. They want to come and watch the equipment work. And so that's what we're working on right now. I've got a list of over almost 300 people now that are real estate developers and contractors that potentially want to buy the equipment. Well, I can only make 8 systems a month. I mean, that's kind of the, when you put all the pieces together, the weak link in the chain is the mobile platform that we have, and we can only get 8 of those a month right now. We'll ramp that up as we, go down the road, but that's for the foreseeable future, 6, 8, 10 months, whatever. So that's part of it. So I've got all these people, and everyone's like at the starting blocks, and they're waiting for the starter's gun to go off, and then everybody's going to want one all at once. And I say that because when I went to Russia 2 years ago to buy the APIS core equipment to build the 106 houses in the back of my eco village, I had investors lined up for this 21-acre project, and I had investors lined up to buy 2 pieces of equipment, bring them back, and we were going to make a go of this and teach people how to do it, right? Well, when I got there, the Russians basically said, we've changed our mind. We don't want to sell to you. We want to keep the equipment, and then you guys hire us, and we'll come build your houses for you. And I went, that business model really isn't going to work with the contractors in the U.S., because it's not like we go out and build 500 houses at a time, where they're all lined up in a row and they're all, 800 square feet and they all look the same. And that's kind of what they were envisioning. And the reason when you dug into that, the reason they didn't want to sell it and they changed their business model is because they put 2 videos online, a Facebook video that was a little over 2 minutes long and a Mashable video that was the longer 6-minute version of the same thing. And in 10 days, Tank, they got 75 million views worldwide. Now, that's a construction video. They were getting 5,000 to 6,000 emails a day, and there was only 13 people in the company, and most of those were engineers. So there was no way they could respond. Their telephones were ringing literally off the hook for months, because they'd put it down, it'd be ringing from Singapore. Put it down, it'd be ringing from Dubai. Put it down, it'd be ringing from New Zealand. It just was, the demand was incredible. But everybody wanted to see, have you built one? Have you built one? Have you built one? And to date, I don't think they've built another house out of that little 400 square foot or circular house that was on their video. They haven't built anything in the U.S., and neither have any of the other companies. And it gets down to, you've got to be able to get permits. And in order to do that, you have to comply with code. And that's where we excel, is we can comply with code. So, anyway, I don't mean to ramble.
No, not at all. Everything you're saying is very engaging, Larry. It's incredible. So, I do have some concerns about this. Obviously, when you go to a disrupted industry, you're going to have vipers who are going to find ways to try to suppress it. So I would say one of the first things that they are definitely doing already, because they have everybody's, hand out and they're greasing everybody in every one of these places, right, to try to prevent that from happening, right? So the only way around that is to essentially create a product and have enough backing that you can withstand the storm, right, while they catch on. Now, another way they do it is they'll come in and say, we're going to pay you to build 50 million houses, right? And then they stall you out and never actually come through, right? That's another way they do it. Another way they do it is they'll control the company that makes the equipment. So I'm very big on this, as you know, Larry, is that we have to build everything, and we have to make sure that the people, real people, in that area, that live in that area where the company, this factory is, whatever it is, even if we have to create our own from scratch, we have to make sure that every aspect of the production line to build your houses is in place, which is what, essentially at the end of the day, why I don't feel anybody can compete with us, because no one's ever even proposed that, ever, right?
Right.
And the reason why we're going to do it is because this is the way to restore humanity. You have to give back ownership of things to people, right? Everything shouldn't be owned by a few, people, hanging out in various castles somewhere who don't even know what's going on. It should be owned by the people who live there, right? Whose blood, sweat, and tears is about that business.
Right.
Now, where is the equipment produced? Is that something that we can go in and purchase or work with them?
Absolutely. I've already met with them.
The owner?
I went to, well, first of all, it's a number of different pieces of equipment. We've got a mobile platform. We've got the print head that I designed, so that's my patent, pending thing. There's a cement mixer. There's a cement pump. There's silos. There's, the electrical generators, the air compressors, all these different components that move concrete from, a dry powder and mix it with water and pump it out to be, put onto the house. So that whole system comes from probably 6 different vendors. One of them, the one that is the mobile platform that we're working with, and they're very much in line with what we're doing. I just met with them in Germany about a month ago, and at the big BOMA meeting that happens every 3 years, it's a big machinery deal. They're willing to help redesign a part of their equipment to incorporate our print head, which would make it a whole lot easier, and better in the long run to do that. So that's one piece. The other pieces are different, like I said, cement mixers and pumps and hoses and, different things you need to physically do it. So the real key thing, because if they, for some reason, went away or didn't want to, do it, I can put my print head on anything, and I can make my print heads. And so it really just gets into the commodities of the mixer and the pumps and, things you can buy from any number of different manufacturers. These guys are working well so far. I told you before, I think the real advances are going to come into material science, and that's part of our eco-village concept, is to develop not only the R&D labs that test that, but also the manufacturing plant, a portion of it, to do a geopolymer plant, mixing plant. And so we can not only just supply ourselves, but we can supply all the other contractors out there that are buying equipment from us. The problem is, when you do that, concrete's very expensive to ship. So you want to have regional plants that can, maintain the quality. And I agree with you 100%. We need to own those plants and maintain the quality and give job opportunities and let the owners, ownership, at least a portion of it, be owned by the people that are working there. I truly believe in the co-op type concept. I've set my company up to do that. I've set aside a percentage of the income, of the gross income before taxes, for the employee benefits. They can vote on it. They'll be able to give themselves bonuses or better health care or better dental plans or car allowances or whatever it is that they need, because I agree with you, they should be in charge of their own destinies. They can invest in the company or whatever. But we're also setting a part of it to a trust or a foundation. I've set it up as a foundation to basically be able to go overseas, because like the Tom Shoes model, every time I physically build a house here in this country, I want to be able to build a house for someone in Honduras or Guatemala or Nairobi, Kenya, or wherever, as a way to give back. And I think your employees appreciate that. I think, if you paid them to go on a mission trip to build houses for poor people in devastated areas, for instance, that's something that people can get into, because they truly do want to help their fellow human beings, whether they're next door, whether they're in, Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, or whether they're halfway around the world. The need is, believe it or not, McKinsey did a study, Tank, that showed that the need for affordable housing was a $10 trillion problem globally. And when you look at the number of people, like kind of in the arc between India through the Middle East and down into Africa, it's 1.75 billion people live in squalor. Well, okay, let's all get together and let's all get together and go out and print houses everywhere. Well, that's great, except for you need the infrastructure as well. You need job opportunities for these people. You need telecommunications. You need clean water. You need power. You need transportation systems. You need all the things that create a community, not just houses. And that's why I don't want to lose sight of, we're trying to create better communities of the future, not let's just, bulldoze everything and build houses and, call that
right.
Good.
Let's put a Band-Aid on it. Right. Well, and that's why, and that's why, in my opinion, not my opinion, this is just a fact, that, I've been building this network for years, with exactly those things in mind, because I recognize that there's different permits and there's different cultures and there's different aspects of different cultures you have to respect and you have to consider. In India, they tax like 120%. How is that even possible? But in reality, it's like everybody does all their business in cash. So that's a different animal. That's a whole different animal, because you can't just be walking around with big lump sums of cash, right? But that is, in fact, what happens, matter of fact, I used to live in a floral park in Queens for like 10 years, and it basically became a very predominantly Indian neighborhood. And the houses were getting robbed on a regular basis because Indians would come over, and they would bring a lot of cash with them, because that was just normal part of their culture, and they would just have cash sitting around all the time. So now you can't trust the banks, and then your cash is getting stolen from your house. And you can't claim back cash. You're not getting it back. Like no one's coming back to, reward you for that, right? So these are challenges, in every culture that we're going to have to face. And that's why it's so important that we recognize we have to integrate into cultures in a way that is considerate, it is kind, it is generous, and it is accurate, right? We don't just go in and say, we're going to do this to you. No, we're not. We're going to go in and ask people, what do you need? And that's kind of some of the groundwork that we're going to provide for you when you go to expand with Create Change. We'll have people there already that we can give you a very accurate assessment. And that's why we have people all over the world right now who are already doing things like that all the time. And they give me reports sometimes ad nauseum. So they're always coming. And sometimes I say that only because it's almost overwhelming at times, because there's so much messed up stuff going on around the world, and there's so many people that are in dire need, Now, that being said, let me ask you this question about this state of the construction first before we go into kind of greater global need of how we're changing the world with things like this. Now, there's some properties and things we're looking at that are just really high vibrational and incredible nature preserves, and they're really not nature preserves. I mean, you can build on them, but they're these incredible, exquisite examples of nature. And I don't know if you know Frank Lloyd Wright, but he's like an organic
Sure.
architect, right? Self-taught. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, is this device, is it that adaptable? I mean, if you're familiar with his work, you know what I mean. That his work, it curves to the natural form of nature. It has this incredible way of just really blending in almost to the natural environment, right? With minimal disruption and utilizing the natural elements that are already there. Now, it sounds to me like you're already very much in line with that, even though it's very high tech, right? But it sounds to me like that would be amazing if we can work with it that way too, right?
The last thing you want to do is create boxes and have that over a period of time turn into essentially a slum. And so I think what this type of equipment does, ours and other people's, it allows people to be creative with the design and also what you put into the house. And not everybody can afford, all the different levels of amenities and options that are available, and it doesn't make sense all the time. And I can give an example of that about what Brad Pitt did with the houses in the Ninth Ward in New Orleans. But you've got to build differently. You've got to look at the design like he did and say, how does it fit more into where we're building this particular project? And when somebody pulls up to the house, whether it's in an air car or an Uber driver or their own car or walks or whatever, when they go up to that house and they look at that house for their first time, it needs to draw them in. So design is critical. And if you can't achieve that, I think you've kind of wasted the value of our equipment and the properties of our building. Is you've got to have people want to live in these places. They need to be drawn to, like, wow, this
right,
looks just
exactly,
like a $1 million house, but it really only is a $180,000 house. But it looks great because no one else is building this way. And so that's a key component. So design and engineering. The thing I think people didn't realize about Frank Lloyd Wright was it wasn't just the design; it was the engineering that went into the house that made it, hang out over, waterfalls and streams and that sort of thing. And
amazing.
That's critical. Yeah.
And he's all self-taught, by the way. He doesn't have an architectural degree. He just understood how to do it and has been doing this his whole life. It's incredible.
It is incredible. And I think there's examples from him and many other, like I never get enough of looking at creative architecture. And our system, since it is mobile, it can move around instead of having to be stationary on a flat piece of ground. And just getting back to some of the reasons I think ours is a really good system is we're building on a slope tank that has a 20-degree incline, not only down the street, but also about a 5% incline to the back of the property. So you're looking at a compound incline that's literally 17 feet of difference between the front left corner of the house and the back rear corner of the house. So much so that we changed the design to put the garage underneath the house on one side on the lower end, because it just didn't make sense for people to park the car and have to walk up 30 feet in elevation to get up into their house.
That would get old quick.
But we're showcasing that you don't have to have a flat piece of ground for this to work. And so it also has a boom that goes up 38 feet. and then a jib that comes out from that another 12 feet. So we can go up and over, we can go around, we can go underneath and up. And so when we're spraying, we literally can spray 360 degrees depending on how we position not only the mobile platform, but also our nozzle. And that gives you that creative license, if you will, to say, well, let's not do things the way we have. And here's an example. I believe in roadmaps. You know, where are we going from here? 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, which is one of the reasons I mentioned before. We were looking to work with a polyurethane insulation manufacturer to use graphene to strengthen and give structural integrity to just the insulation, right, before we even sprayed the concrete. The reason being is because you've seen these kids' birthday parties, 8, 10 years old, and they get these bouncy things, you know, rented and stuck in the front yard of the driveway, and all the kids bounce on them, and they're inflated by air, like they look like castles or, you know, Mickey Mouse or whatever.
Yep.
Well, that same material can be used and inflated to a particular style or type of house, whether it's a rounded wall or a bulbous wall or something of that nature. And you can literally, like Legos, put these inflatable pieces together to build more unique homes and spray the outside with insulation, and then come back and spray that with concrete, and then deflate the deal so it's got structural integrity. Then you deflate the balloon and you pull that out of there, and then you put the electrical and the plumbing and all that, and then you come back and spray the inside. Now that's that's a foundry concept. You know, it's like how they make. You know, it's. I mean, I know. I'm sure you know this, but for everybody out there, you know, like when you make new parts or you make a sculpture even out of, you know, brass or whatever, or gold even. You know, you sculpt it out of wax, and then essentially you put it in and you cast it in kind of what you're talking about here, and then you melt it out, right? So that you heat it, and then it melts out the wax, and then you have the shell left over, and you can pour things into it. But this is kind of like that, but you actually end up with the clear structure. That's amazing. That's a great idea, man. That's really incredible. And that's the sort of thing that's not proven in the code yet, and so we would have to work, and you know, you got to probably spend $500,000 or more just testing wall systems that are built that way to get the engineering data that people are going to go, okay, I can do that, you know, with this method. And so those are the types of things I'm looking at in terms of the future to reduce the cost, but also use that creative design concept as, you know, we've got to get out there and build houses for people that people truly want to live in and that are functional. Well, you know, I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying, because I think what's so important, you know, people's home is so important, right? I mean, we're going to be home a lot of times, and you want to give people a home they're proud of. You know, you're talking about, you know, mass producing the same kind of houses. You know, people always call me with, like, we're going to build 200 million houses. I'm like, well, good luck. You're not doing it with our money, because we're not going to sponsor, you know, we're not going to have a project that is building projects like the projects in the city, okay? Because the projects were always designed to herd people into minimal cost, because affordable is what everything should be, right? Because if you have access to money and it's available and money is flowing because jobs are paying appropriate wages for everyone to thrive, right? Now, there might be levels, right, but they shouldn't be like, well, this guy makes $100 million a year and this guy makes, you know, $20,000 a year and he works for the same company. That shouldn't happen, right? We should have more of a common ground in a sense. And as a matter of fact, to your point about what you're saying about your, you know, potential employees, right? Right.
You know, it's the most natural thing in the world. The most natural things in the world. I will give you the elements of what it means to be human. The first one is philoprogenitiveness. Philoprogenitiveness is the natural love for your offspring. It is the most natural thing about being human, because humans are born completely defenseless. Every other animal, I mean, you know, cows can walk within seconds of their birth. Right? Other animals are able to defend themselves for the most part, but human beings are completely defenseless. They're reliant on that nature, the philoprogenitive nature of loving their offspring. And if we didn't love our offspring, they would just be a burden. Now, the next one is to really to love your neighbor, so to speak, right? To help your fellow man. We are all naturally given over to trust and to care for each other. You know, we all respect somebody else's mom. For the most part, I mean, we would genuinely want to take care of them, right? We want to take care of people who don't have what they need. We would want to help somebody, you know, who gets a flat tire. It's just how people are. Now, if we engage people on that level and create that environment, that is how we change the world. And I think that's great. I love everything you're saying.
I think so too. I mean, kind of what you just said reminded me. On Thursday, I have to excuse me. I have to go to a funeral of a gentleman that was in his 90s, and I go to church and basically probably a year and a half. I guess it was 2 years ago now. I stood up and told him I had started this prison ministry, and I said, you know, I'm 60 years, well, I'm 62 now, but 60 at the time. I said, I'm 60 years old, and this is the first time that I've seen the true meaning of the word agape, love. You know, it's that self-sacrificial, I'm going to do more for you than and not care what happens to me kind of love.
Wait a minute, no, that's not true. That's not true. Don't say that. That's not what it is. Sacrifice is never a part of love. That's not true. It is willingly sharing of yourself in the wholeness of your being in a way that is unconditional and unlimited. But excuse me, I'm just big on words, Larry. So
I am too.
We don't want
and I'll disagree with you on that to a point. I do a lot of research myself. So when I say self-sacrificial, I don't mean that you deny yourself. What I'm saying is you have the option of denying what's best for you so that you can help someone else. And it gets back to that example you gave just a minute ago. Somebody's making $100 million and somebody's making $20,000. Well, what are you going to do about it? Well, I'm going to give up the $100 million because I don't need all that, and I'm going to help the people around me. He's sacrificing from that aspect. That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean. No, I you know what it is? I always look at like the kind of what words end up meaning and the way the cabal's perverted them, you know, and they've made sacrifice this ritual, horrible thing, you know, it's used for to create guilt and shame. And no, I'm just saying, I know that's not what you meant. That's why I was trying to define it. But I understand what you're saying, totally. I totally understand what you're saying. And I think that's a great point.
And all I'm saying is, you know, I stood up 2 years ago and I spoke about what it meant to me to see this and how I saw transformation in other people, how they responded to our love for them. We didn't care. We never asked them what they did, how long they were in for, you know, any of that stuff. We just basically cared about them. And we spent 4 days loving on these guys. And, you know, when they walked in and the first day, it was like, what do you guys want from us? You know, what's your angle and all that sort of thing. And by the end of that time, they're like hugging us and calling us brothers and, oh my gosh, we're crying together and all that sort of thing. Anyway, I spoke about that in my church, and this guy, Tom, he stood up and basically said, you know, I want to be involved in that. The guy's 90 years old. And he at that time in his life still felt the need to go help people, just like what you were saying. If we can give of ourselves to help others. And I cannot tell you, when a 90-year-old man walks into a prison, and he's a little short guy, about 5'6", 5'5", probably no more than dripping wet, 110 pounds or something, but he had a handshake like a vice grip. he blew people away. Soft spoken, but he was just like, I don't even know how to say it. They just flocked to him for some reason. He was just a natural born attractor of people. And when he hugged you and kind of gave you that little smile of his and stuff, I can't tell you how much he meant to so many of those guys that are sitting in prison. And so many of those guys, Tank, that are sitting in prison are there because of the circumstances of their parents either being drug addicts. You know, two Kairoses ago, we had one guy basically tell us, hey, my mom and dad were crack and meth addicts, and they made me at 5 years old go out onto the street corner and sell crack. And if I didn't come back with the money so they can, go enjoy themselves. They would beat me and put me to bed without dinner. When you're 5 years old and you have parents like that, how do you make the right decision? Because that's the way his life was. It's impossible. So is there any wonder why our prisons are full of people that made bad decisions? And yes, they got what they deserve, so to speak, from the justice system, but it's when they come out, they're ready to come out and change their lives. And that's where I want to be. I want to be in a place where we can help guys like that get back on their feet, pay them a living wage, not a minimum wage, and give them a skill that takes them into the future so they can develop a family and be a different person and go out and back and help people just like, we're helping them. They'll go back into that prison and people will listen to them because of their testimony, because that's where they've already come from. So anyway, I'm real passionate about what you said.
I'll tell you that the prison system is one of my kind of secret projects. I actually I have quite a few people that I'm doing all I can to understand their situation and connect them with the right people to get them out that have been put in prison during the time when the Clintons moved into Harlem. And when the Clintons moved into Harlem, that's where you had major profiling take place, right? Right. Because it was justifiable because of September 11th. And it wasn't justifiable, but I'm saying that's how they justified it. And so they were just literally just picking up young black men off the street everywhere in Harlem and just arresting them, putting them in Rikers Island for years for nothing. Wouldn't have charges, yep. Wouldn't have a trial. And then when they would get, eventually, you're in prison for a long time wrongly, right? Like, you're furious, right? Like, eventually you're going to do something, like, to defend yourself, or something's going to happen. I mean, the potential's there. A lot of people, a lot of these guys I've talked to, they were not criminals. And but then they went inside and kind of were forced to become criminals, right? That's one thing. But the other thing is this bill that it's like the unnecessary show of force kind of a bill. I can't remember what it's called, but they had it on deck for a couple of years, and finally President Trump got it put through in December. And basically that's when people had a nonviolent drug possession or, even selling drugs offense, and they had an unnecessarily harsh sentence, right? Now, I've got a guy right now who he never had a criminal record. Never had a criminal record, right? And his mom was sick, and he was trying to make some money to help her, so he was running drugs back and forth from Philly to New York. Now, I would never recommend that. I don't endorse that, but it was his only offense he ever had. He got pulled over with, enough there, and he got enough there to know that it was going to be sold, kind of thing, right? So, but it was his only offense ever. And you know what they did? They actually put this in the paperwork. They gave that man 30 years in prison. 30 years, man. That man he was from the Dominican Republic, and back in the Dominican Republic, he had built done all these wonderful things for the elderly, and the man was dedicated his life to service, and he just wanted to take care of his mom. Now I look at those things, and they're always heartbreaking me, right? So I'm really I think about them, and I'm always I keep them in my mind, because I think as I'm out here feeling like we're enslaved, because we are, and I think about how much worse it would be to be locked in a box like that. And then while in prison, he fell down the stairs and hurt himself, and then he got set up to get, because he's making all this noise, right, and trying to get out. They don't want him to make noise, because the prison system is just another element of the economy, right? It's an economic move. Everything's economy. So they can put somebody in prison, and they just hope people forget about them, because they'll continue to collect money, off them being in prison. And that's the problem with all of these things that we're doing. Like, educational system is the same. It's all motivated by test scores, right? So everybody gets motivated to get test scores. So really, education should be about learning, right? Shouldn't that be the standard? If people actually can learn something, right? They know what they're doing. And the prison system should be about reform, right? And actually helping these guys become contributors to society, right? But it's not about that, right? They don't even give them a shot. They actually make it so when they come out, the possibility of them getting on their feet is almost made impossible. I mean, it is really, really tough. And I talk to a lot of these guys, and that's, and I feel the same way about the vets, right? The vets come back from, active duty. They've just participated in all types of things and exposed to all types of chemicals, and I'm actually looking into testing some things right now for some vets. I'm getting it tested for them, and because it's going to prove exactly, that there was crimes against humanity committed against them by their own commanding officers.
Yep.
And that's the reality. And then they come back, and what do? They give them antipsychotics, and they give them therapy so they can be in an altered state, and essentially and be in pain in a lot of cases as well, and then relive their worst nightmares over and over and over again. Therapy is, there's a value to therapy on some level, with certain things, but it doesn't always work out the way people think. In a lot of ways, it's torture. It can be torture for people, or it can have it's reinforcing things that are awful and hard, and not in all cases, but in some cases. And in this case, I think that's true.
Well,
So,
I don't know if I told you this. I think I might have, but my brother's the chairman of the Non-Commissioned Officers Association, and I'm working with him and a university to develop a training program for veterans using this. As a matter of fact, the first guy that I hired was a veteran, and he was in Afghanistan, and he was a combat engineer, and he's suffering from some things, just like you said. But I'm using him to help document the training program, this first build to show how we can get out there and provide this kind of hands-on training for veterans. And that's veterans and prisoners is my two big things right now. And I'm sure other people will have their groups as they take this back to their areas. But internationally and nationally, I think we've got a lot of work to do in the veterans community. Still, it's
Larry, I'll tell you what though, I have no doubt you'll be successful, and I just want you to know that whatever you're doing, man, the fact that you're coming from a place of agape love, and that's where you want to build from. I mean, you can't go wrong. You cannot fail. It is the reality of what we can build. Now, what we also have a unique opportunity to do, right, in the situation is everything you're talking about is something that we can actually put real funding behind for the first time in history. I mean, we have an unprecedented opportunity because for the first time in history, we have people who are advocates of people, right? Not people trying to get rich off other people, right? Because at the end of the day, people, when I talk to people and potential project owners, one of the things a lot of people try to do with me is they start by pitching to me how much money we can make. And I immediately shut them down, and I'm like, listen, I want you to talk about the integrity of your project, how it's going to help humanity, specifically the humanity in that area. How do you know that's true? And explain to me what you're going to do from that standpoint, and don't worry about the money, because I don't care about it. I'm not going to make money off them, of all this money. I'm not investing in that way, right? It's grant money, right? And they did this years ago. This has been like this for at least 30 years, and I'm sure it's been like that longer. But there has been $500 billion in unrewarded grants every year that the U.S. government holds on to. And the reason why they go unrewarded is because they're so niche specific that it's a lot of stuff that people wouldn't even want to, research or be part of. And so what happens is they're almost impossible to get, and people just get worn out, and that's intentional. But if they just brought that money out, we would have the most thriving economy in the world times 1,000, right? Because every dollar in grant money that goes out produces $15, right? That's a general statistic. And that stat is probably 10 years old, so it could be much more than that by now. But that's the thing that is really unique, is that when we get to look at these projects and say, look, we are people too, and we recognize it. And we're leaders, right? And we know our responsibility is to make sure to restore and revitalize humanity, right? And really help people be the best version of themselves. And that is what you don't see in our leadership, quote unquote leadership. So, Larry, I got a great feel for what you're going to do, man. We're going to support every single, we're going to do so much amazing work together, and I really just, I know that you're the prettiest girl at the ball, and everybody wants your attention, and I certainly appreciate you, sticking with us, and I know that we will have the best option for you. I know that's what's the best way for you to accomplish all these things, that we'll be able to fund these things and work together. And, man, I'm just honored to be a part of it with you. I really am. I'm just so blown away by everything you're doing and what you think. I'm so encouraged by it because I talk to so many people who think they have great ideas, and it's just oftentimes it's the same recycled thing over and over again,
Well, and I appreciate those kind words. I just want to make one thing perfectly clear. I am not a woman. You said that.
Yes.
The best-looking girls of all. I am not a transgender. I'm sorry. I'm a man, and I'm going to stay a man.
Yes.
So I'm kidding you. I'm kidding you, Tank. But I appreciate the kind words. It really, to me, is where we should all be going, and it's hard to do sometimes. And I think what you're doing and what other people are doing, that I've looked at the Creator Network, and the concept is we, as if you want to call us leaders, have to put together projects that people can get behind. And we talked about this. Why do people get behind? It's like the 90-year-old guy. He had to get behind it because deep in his soul, he said, man, I got to go help these people. It touched him. And regardless of whether it's this project or other projects or halfway around the world, we've got to have good projects and good implementation of those projects for people to get behind. And I think you're going to see a groundswell of people that turn from their current path of, super capitalism. Everybody needs to make money and so forth and so on. I'm not against that whatsoever. But we have to have the priorities where I don't need to get more money so I can build a bigger vault next year and put more money in it. And
That's
then
right.
Get a bigger vault the year after. Okay, it needs to flow. It needs to flow back into the community. And I think we don't have to be a millionaire or a billionaire before we do that. I think we start our businesses that way, giving back.
That's right.
Right away, almost like a co-op thing. And yeah, there's money to be set aside for investment capital and so forth. Great. Okay, great. But I just encourage everybody that's listening to think about not just the money, but the meaning behind the project. And I'll leave it at that.
Oh, man, yeah, listen, I'm on to you, Larry. I get your one-liners, your power statements. I'm with it, man. I got it. Look, I like that. You're right. It's not the money, it's the meaning. I talk about this all the time, purpose-driven. Matter of fact, I got a pair of CrossFit, lifters that I have, and I had them engraved on their purpose. So every time I go to lift, I remember, do it with purpose. Live with purpose, right? Purpose, when you give people purpose, you give them meaning. You give them a reason to be great. And there's this mythology that I really want to actively debunk. And Larry, I'm going to tell you because I just know you're an influencer. I'm just going to share it because I keep hearing it from people who think they're leaders. And they keep thinking that if people have everything they need, that they'll become lazy and they won't do anything. Now, it couldn't be further from the truth. The reality is they won't be able to be controlled and pushed to do the things that certain people want them to do. But if people have what they need and they're not worried about the looming debts and college loans and mortgages and money they can't make enough of, and the credit cards are running up to try to live a comfortable life and still pay their bills. If they didn't have that, if they knew there was enough money, if they knew it was there, if they knew they could be exactly who they want to be, that world will be so much more innovative, so much more beautiful, so much more in harmony. It'll resonate a vibration that will just naturally cause people to be healthier, happier, more intelligent and better looking. Just naturally that'll happen. And that all comes down to us. I'm a fervent believer, and anybody out there, look, I say pass this on. Pass this on to everybody you know. There is a scripture in the Bible, Deuteronomy 30 and 19. Now, I know some people aren't Christians out there, and that's okay. I'm not either. But I believe in I look at all the sacred texts and consider them all the same, and I look for the value of them. Now, this scripture says, Deuteronomy 30 and 19, it says, I place before thee blessings and cursings, life and death. And then, seemingly, God, knowing that we might make the wrong choice, he told us the answer. It said, choose life. Now, I'm not talking about taking a stand on abortion. I'm talking about a choice that we make consciously every single day, that you get 1,000 opportunities to make these choices. You get a choice whether or not you're going to cuss somebody out on the highway or you're going to walk by somebody in need. You get a choice if you're going to be kind or be ruthless. You've got a choice all the time of who you're going to do business with and how you're going to do business. And these choices all the time, they always come down to that same thing. You choose life or death. This is the choice in front of you. One comes with blessings, one comes with cursings. Now, just because something is convenient in that moment, I would encourage everyone, take the time to really consider, is this a life choice or a death choice? Because we're in a time in history that is absolutely unprecedented. We can go build something bigger and greater and more magnificent than we ever could have imagined, than we ever could have conceived of, if we just stand up together. If we just stand and realize the incredible differences in our beliefs, our looks, our appearance, our upbringing, our highs, our lows, our triumphs, and our tragedies. All of those things, they do not make us different. They are not the reason why we should be divided. They are the reason why we should stand united. Our differences are what make the human experience so unique and amazing. The universe that exists inside of every person and can be ignited and activated and makes every person interesting. Because there's certain things you just can't forgive. Certain things you can't let go. Mine is boring. When people are just boring and unimaginative, I just can't be around them. I need to be around and surrounded by people who are considerate, objective. They're Imagineers, and they're imagining a world of impossible realities that we can create every day. And as soon as people start talking to me and say, well, you can't do that, as soon as they say that, I'll immediately shut myself down, because the fact that you think I can't do that immediately makes me think, well, how am I going to get it done then? Because I'm going to get it done.
Absolutely. That's so true. It's like a challenge. Like somebody tells you can't do something.
Yeah, I know. And I'm not one like, I don't believe it. Like, I don't seek revenge. I forgive people. I don't hold grudges, at all. But whenever people tell me I can't do something, I think to myself, you don't even know me to know what I can do. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I'll say, anytime somebody tells me they can't do something, I think you don't even know yourself.
That's the old Thomas Edison. 10,000 times he tried to, and when people asked him, he was reported that he said, "Well, I was just finding a way that it didn't work."
I identify all the ways that aren't right. Right, exactly.
That it wasn't the right way. So
let me ask you this question, man. So a lot of what I talk about is building from the roots up, right? And in these communities you're talking about, now, if I could expand that community, now you talked about just kind of a starter community like 21 acres. But say we had 500 acres, right? And we had a 500-acre piece of property. Now on this property, we could put things, right? We could build an entirely unique community. We could have real education, that was engaging, included the parents. We could have, it wasn't just a 9-to-5 thing, right? You'd have, teachers that have 5 students, and that way all the kids are getting the attention they need to excel, right? We could use sacred geometry and various organic structures that would actually act as conduits to create energy, and not just energy to power the houses, but energy to power the people. We could build, all types of amazing things that would allow us to, move around the property. We have anti-gravitational technology right now. I can tell you for a fact. Now, I would like to create these communities like that, and I would like to link them across the whole world, really. And I would like to use the high-speed monorail that was described in that was agreed to by every country in the world back in 1978. And that high-speed monorail, most people don't know this. It actually operates and is made from the same alloy as the Ark of the Covenant. And in addition to that, it operates on anti-gravitational technology. And it can literally, and the reason why it can connect every place on the planet is it doesn't need a track. You can take it right out over the water. It'll go right out over the water. Now, we have that now, and Kim actually has the plans on that. She has models already up and running. And those are going to go around the world, and they will actually help restore the natural divine energy of the planet, the Taurus energy fields, right? And that's pretty amazing stuff. Now, I think, Larry, that where we should start, and I think we should take your project. I think this would be I think this is in line with everything that you're talking about. I think we make these communities in every state in the country, and we connect them all with this high-speed monorail so that you can travel from place to place and learn about other people and other communities who aren't just like you, but they're enough like you that they chose life too. And they get to choose that every day. Do you think we can do that, man? Do you think it's something? Yeah.
Well, do I think I can do it? No, I know I can do it. The point of the 21-acre eco-village was to do a demonstration project. Because once you do the first one, everybody's going to want in on it.
Yep, I know. And we need to keep them unique and creative. And I think every single thing you said today, man, I agree with every word of it.
Well,
that is inspiring, man. Outstanding.
I appreciate that, Tank. I really do. I just I'd like to be able to pass on something to Kim if it's at all possible. And several of us in the network have talked about it. It's like we're ready, willing, and able to talk to people, to do whatever we can to help her overcome some of these issues. If we need to get a military C-130 and fly to wherever these vaults are and bring some of the stuff back and sell it and put it into an account or whatever. At some point, it's like this has got to happen, because it's the vision here, and with all the other people you've had on and talked to, and what you're trying to do yourself, and what she's trying to do is bigger than any of us. We just need to get it going. So whatever we can do, I put that out there into the ether. If we can help, in any way, her, Tommy, you, tap into us.
Well, I'll tell you what, I appreciate you putting that on record, and I will make sure, believe me, anything significant. I share everything with Kim. I don't, she's not someone you can really keep secrets from, and I certainly don't make any effort to do that, ever. I trust her completely. A lot of times, different people now, they'll mention Kim, and I take it very personally when people are mean-spirited about her or say nasty things. People that their only intention is that they could be in control, have the nerve and audacity to say that she is so hard to deal with. In the time I've known her, which is roughly a year and a half right now, she's probably had 300 attempts on her life. That any one of those would have killed us, but just based on who she is and how she works and the things she has in place, and because of her integrity to take a stand, she has really made a way for all of humanity to survive and to thrive. She said that she would take humanity over all else. Now, in my opinion, I don't know how you feel, Larry, but I feel like you're like me in this way. When somebody puts that kind of an investment in me and believes in me personally, even if it's a collective, but believes in me personally, when someone puts their whole life, like that agape love you talked about, they put their whole life and say, no, I believe in you and I'm here for you. My attitude is like this: I will not let you down. I will not let you down.
Well, and that's the point I was trying to make to her, is that, sometimes as a human being, you're going to feel I'm all alone. If 300 people tried to kill me, I'd be like, okay, all I'm saying is there's a lot of people out here that want to help, and any way we can. We're not sure how because we don't talk to her and find out what her specific needs are. I just put that out there to you to say, look, there's a lot of people that support her. You can either use prayer, or you can use hope, or you can use vibrations, or however your belief is. Mine is particularly prayer, but put it out there and say, look, we're here to help. And, same thing for Donald Trump and what he's trying to do and the changes we're trying to make. Who can be against greatness? Who can be against greatness? I want to be greater. I want to be not greater than someone else. I want to reach my potential.
Absolutely.
Donald
Trump said this,
and
I totally agree. Donald Trump said recently in one of his speeches, he said, in the State of the Union address, he said, I am asking you to choose greatness. Donald Trump said that. He won my heart that night. I said, now, I tell people this every day, Larry. Humanity is incredible. But we've been convinced that we're very average, that we're very small, and we can't do much, and we're limited, and our intelligence is limited, and we didn't score well on a test, so, we're not much of whatever. We've been told we have to fit into a system. The sky's the limit, right? All these different things that they pretend are encouraging, but what they're doing is they're trying to make us less amazing. I'll tell you what, I feel just like this, and I appreciate that you are clearly like this. I appreciate that you have owned that you're exceptional, and instead of waiting for somebody else to do it and then following their lead, that you are taking the lead and willing to go out and lead with your chin and say, I will be exceptional. I'll be that for you. I'll be that for everybody. And I think that is what it takes to change the world, is that if we can just recognize the power that's in all of us, if we could just recognize it. Because you talk about prayer and you talk about the scriptures. Now, the scriptures read that it's the Holy Spirit in you. Now that's the divine essence, the nature that is naturally in us waking up. It's universal to all religions. It's not just Christianity. It's the same principle because all the spirit that we have is divine. It's from God, and that makes it, holy, so to speak. And when you realize that's the same spirit. I mean, that's what the Messiah said when he prayed up to, God. He said, Father, make them one as you and I are one. In other words, the same way that we know the Messiah was God in the body, he wanted us to see that, that measure of God in our bodies, that we're made of the same substance, from the same source. So why wouldn't we be looking? And then he even told us, greater things than these shall you do.
Yep.
Now that to me has always been amazing. If we can just realize that a lot of the conflicts we have, because I'm often attacked or accused of being a New Ager or something like that, and I'm not. I'm not. But I know the scriptures very well. And better than most, I've many a times embarrassed the pastor because, they finally end up admitting to me that they modify their message because that's their job. And that's one of the big mistakes we made. We made something that should be available to everybody for free, is the understanding of God, and we made it a business. Now that was a trick. I don't blame anybody for that. I'm just saying, I do blame people for that, but I don't blame the people who are on that path. But, so. With that in mind, Larry, I'm about to take us out of here, man. Any final notes, last message actually, you know what? I know your last message was to Kim, and that's enough, I think. So
I was going to say that, I just want you and Tommy and Kim especially to know that they're not alone. There are a lot of people out here that want what she wants, and maybe we're not as gifted or whatever like you said, we each have different qualities, but by God, we can stand together.
Man, I am with you all the way. I'm so glad you came on. Thank you so much. This really is the time we're in. Folks, we have overcome a great obstacle. Please know that you are part of that victory, that we are united in our hearts and minds, and we all know we want to be liberated and be free. To do that, we cannot allow any place for fear. We have to be bold and courageous. We have to face these things and integrate them into our reality and move forward and act